I have a very obsessive personality, and I became obsessed with Scream. I was 10 years old, almost 11, and I loved the characters. To me, Scream is my Bible. It is the best horror movie. And that's just because of, when I saw it in my life. I was in graduate school at USC, and I had come directly out of undergrad at UCLA. In UCLA, I studied theater. I was a theater directing and playwriting major. And Michael Taylor, who was the head of the production department, he came to a class and pitched a new class that he was studying called Making Media for Social Change. You have to basically make a movie with a social issue. I saw this as the perfect opportunity to make an updated Scream with Facebook. And so I knew that I had something, and for the next 7 years, it evolved into, what is now Initiation.
John and I met orientation at USC Film School. And John and I had formed, a bond over collaboration then that's continued, and we formed Shatterproof Films shortly after graduating from USC.
After I made the short, Brian and I were like, let's make a movie together. It started off as Brian and I wrote this horror movie back in 2013 together. And of course, Lindsay was going to be cast in it no matter what. I met Lindsay in 2010 at UCLA.
Our relationship really took off when we both got cast in a play together.
Saw her immediately on stage and was like, I need to cast her in something. So she was attached to the project no matter what as like an actor. But then Lindsay would come to these script readings and she would just start helping me write. And then of course, Brian was always in the picture.
And so over the course of several years, the idea evolved, and eventually, I took on more roles in it other than just an actor.
By 2017, we all got back together and just started hammering through pages. We were getting this movie ready because we thought we were going to go in production in 2017. And, then all that fell through. The Me Too movement happened. And so then all three of us really had to take a step back and, assess like what kind of script we wanted to make. Dembanger is really just a term for an exclamation point, like a code term. And the longest time, the movie was supposed to just be called an exclamation point, a digital Scream. I knew that the title was most likely going to change, but I wanted to see the movie and then kind of see what kind of title it got from it, as opposed to like, no, this is the movie. My only shtick was I just needed to make sure the exclamation point was involved in the title somehow.
I thought this was the perfect story to debut because this film was just the perfect way to express kind of the all-encompassing nature of social media and how it runs our lives, and really the conversations we're having face-to-face are just the tip of the iceberg of the subtext of relationships that happen through all of these different communication channels.
It was right after we made the short film that we came up with the sexual assault, aspect to it. It was important for me to tell a story that had a main character who the audience could identify with on a broader scale. And that's people who know people who've been through these scenarios or know people who've been accused of these scenarios. And that was really important, to create a story about a character stuck in the middle.
Any of the themes in this film that we thought of were ones where we were either predicting they would be a hot topic or finally rising to the surface to be a conversation topic, or we knew that they would still be around.
What am I gonna say? Hi. I think I was assaulted, but I was too drunk to really remember.
Yes.
No, that sounds so stupid.
Another one we wanted to explore was universities saving face as opposed to protecting their students.
Mr. Scott, very well liked by this university.
I can see that. Plus, we wouldn't want to tarnish Wes's reputation, now would we?
There's so many thematic elements that we took from horror. I would say one of the more important ones for me was how inherently misogynistic the horror genre has been over the years. And I want to make a horror film that uses all of the same story tropes that you would see in a classic 80s, 90s horror, but gender swap it.
So I met John through our grad program at USC. We were both in the MFA program at USC's film school.
I just remember the very first meeting I had with him on Dembanger the Short. And after that, I knew I had my go-to cinematographer.
John and I do a good amount of pre-production beforehand, as you should, and we just went front to back on the script and shot listed the hell out of it. And John, in addition to being an amazing director, is also an amazing artist. So he took that and he just did meticulous storyboards for nearly every scene of the film.
The shots are all conceived together from the beginning. And after those meetings, up until production, all my free time was drawing all those shots. And then I put them up on the site in my loft here so I could see the entire movie as one image. You just kind of see the change in shading even of the storyboards that I would just think, okay, this scene's gonna be dark. You just kind of see how it naturally progresses as its own macro entity. When you show up to set with storyboards, especially detailed storyboards, it does something to the whole crew. People are like, they trust you. And we can try to push into these close-up moments if we want, but there's probably gonna be a way that Cam A and Cam B can get these moments of the two girls, after the fight. I've got like this red board that I've had since film school that I just tape all of my storyboards to, front and back, and I just love walking around with it. And I love exiting them off after each take, have to do it. I'm very, very specific about my ideas of what I want. Does that mean that the costume designer has to do that? No, they can do what they want. This is just a starting place for you to come up with your own ideas. Jessica, I remember asking me very clearly, so you don't want it to be 90s, but you want it to be like a 90s vibe. I was like, yes. She just did that so perfectly. Ellery's wardrobe at the end of the movie is, I didn't even know she did that, and it's almost identical to Sidney Prescott's. And I do also have to say, Brian Frager had a friend from college who started a sorority fraternity t-shirt company. So they ended up creating the mass prints of the sorority fraternity shirts because, again, I've never seen a college film do that. And that happens at every college party.
If you can't come in her, come on her!
If you have a big cast, costs just spiral out of control. And so that was something stacked against us. But it comes with the territory in a genre film like this because you need enough red herrings to pull you away from the real killer.
The biggest thing that I learned on this movie is how important your casting director is. And so we got Ricky Maisler early 2019, and she brought, the big names to us, like Lachlan.
Hey guys, it's Lachlan Monroe. I play Chancellor Van Horn, and my #1 job is to keep these little shits in line.
Yancey was originally a male cop.
We had thoughts sometimes of like, but is it a female?
So you were at this spot when you saw Mr. Davenport?
When Yancey was brought to the table, we were like, oh God, yes. She elevated every single scene.
A lot of the actors I already knew, I want these people cast.
Whoa.
What's the password?
Lindsay and James, my brother.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. I'm James Berardo. I'm playing Dylan.
Dylan just wants to have fun. He just wants to have a good time. My main worry is how many beers are we gonna get? How much shit's gonna go down? Who's getting the weed? Who's taking the biggest rip of the night? That's Dilly Billy, you know what I mean? I call myself Dilly Billy. But Wes, one of my best buddies, does these things that another one of my best buddies, Bo, doesn't like. I'm like in the middle of this, because I'm always on both of their sides. I can't help it.
Ellery is interesting. She's someone who is so high on life when we meet her, and then something flips that upside down, and everything is challenged for the first time in her life.
Max.
What's up, guys? Maxwell Hamilton here, playing Tyler Harrington, the Dembanger.
When I got this script and it was like, oh, you're this person, you get to play the darker role. But there was so much to play with Tyler. On paper, he is the red herring. The audience is going to see him in his first scene and go, no, I don't like that guy. My biggest challenge, and the thing I had most fun with, was he has some kind of quirks where you just go, what's up with that guy?
Are you sure you don't remember anything else?
Shireen was somebody that we met through one of our investors, and I just knew that she had it. I had Lindsay and Shireen meet to see how they would hit it off, and they became best friends instantly.
Shailene is super sassy and witty and definitely very fun. Beneath that, cares a lot about her friends, especially Ellery, who has been, Shailene's best friend since the beginning. And I think that just really underlies the whole character, her love for Ellery and the rest of the girls. Beyond
the actors that I knew that I'd written the roles for, like Froy, for example, Wes was cast with somebody else, and when I met Froy, I was like, he would be such a good Wes. That role, Wes, was very important to cast because I didn't want to cast him and automatically think yes or no. I had to be in the middle, and when I met Froy, that was instantly what I thought.
It was really important to Froy to bring a conflicted character, and so thus his character is more complex and more dynamic and wasn't just like, I did a bad thing. John and him had a lot of conversations about it, and I remember us speaking to him about the dialogue too. There were things that he wanted to form in his own words, and we were like, go for it.
Froy brought Isabella Gomez because he was on her show One Day at a Time, and he's like, Isabella Gomez would be really great for Kylie. I didn't even make her audition. She said yes right away.
Kylie is the new one in the school. She's new to the sorority, and she's had a really tough life, and she wants to have fun again and wants to let loose. And then all of this goes down. It was a really interesting arc to take her through.
Kent, we got through Ricky.
We've had some issues of cyberbullying on campus. Boys calling out girls on social media after hooking up with them.
Patrick, he auditioned.
As I read the script, this is me reading the script. I was like, die. Somebody dies. Somebody, okay. As a guy, and then I saw it and I was like, oh, thank God. I always thought of Wes and Malik just kind of having that bond of, they are the anchors of the team, but like Malik's character had to fight for everything that he had gotten. You know, Wes's character is really talented and is really skilled and is number one, and Malik is that number two.
Gatlin, you know, was Ricky as well. Like Gatlin, I met him at UCLA.
A lot of the people believe it's Bo up until the time that he is drilled through the neck. And Wes and Bo have some history that I don't think was ever fully resolved. So that is another tension that we see kind of rise, and that are key moments in the script where that becomes an issue.
John Huertas, he met Brian and I, and originally the killer just used a power drill.
You know, I just thought that'd be a really ineffective way to kill someone. I have a background in martial arts and weapons because of my military background, so I feel like there's two weapons. The impact driver, because you know those things you can drive a bolt into concrete with an impact driver. And I thought having a combat style knife to disable them, so then you could do your final kill with a big long bolt. John was very open to that, again, going back to the collaborative spirit. And I said, I'll show you what I mean.
I want it to look...
It looks like a machine gun.
I want it to look a little more beat up too. You don't want it to look brand new.
He said that in this meeting, and I was just like, okay, let's do it. Then Brian and I met him in his office, and he'd already built the drill. He bought the kind of knives he would use. He became Rico Martinez. From the beginning, I knew that I wanted the mask to be reflective. But really, the only reason I wanted it to be reflective was because when I was a kid, I read a review in Entertainment Weekly on Scream, and the reviewer said the mask is the characters screaming when they see the killer back at them, and it's a reflection of themselves. And so I knew I wanted to have that element to it, you know, to where the characters were able to see themselves before they die.
We had actually, prior to shooting the feature, we had done a proof of concept wherein the original concept for the mask was that it was just a mirrored dome. Obviously, you start seeing lights everywhere, you start seeing camera in it, and that introduced a lot of challenges in that regard. And the more we talked about this broken image and your online personality not being indicative of your true life and how that could influence itself in the mask.
I remember it was very late in the process, and we're sitting at lunch, and Pope's like, you know, I'm thinking we should discuss like where we're gonna go with this, and he just said geometric shapes. After I heard that, I went home and I cut up the dome mask, cut it up into shapes, and using tape, and I created this thing right here.
We gave it to my uncle, who's an incredibly talented fabricator, artist, who has just always been fascinated by Imagineering techniques and, you know, the whole lore of Disney. And so he took the concept that John gave him and ran with it. And he not only was able to deliver an incredible looking mask, but made it in the same method that, you know, a factory in China would mass produce hundreds of thousands of these masks with some plastiform mold. And so it really did have like the perfect backstory and creation method to match what we wanted story-wise.
You know, I really did not see the mask until the day that we got it, and it ended up turning into this.
Shooting in LA allowed us to really utilize the talent that we knew, and luckily people were really generous and giving and believed in the story.
We shot it all in Los Angeles, but John didn't want it to feel like Los Angeles. He wanted to feel like really anywhere in America, because he wanted the audience to be able to project their own experiences. So we specifically sought out locations that weren't, flourishing with palm trees and didn't have a lot of those kind of LA landmarks that we traditionally think of. So we shot all practical locations. We had a sorority house over near USC, and that was great because it just feels authentic. They did a great job just enhancing what was already there. For the girls' bedroom, that was actually, we just repurposed a bedroom that was already there, and that was an incredibly small space that I think that they maximized in a really beautiful way. I mean, it was tiny. It was a tiny, tiny, tiny room. And then through the lighting in that space, we just worked with everything that they had, and the first time we're in that space, it feels very soft and very inviting and comforting and kind of warm. And then every time we visit that space, as we continue through the film, it starts to feel a little harder and a little grittier.
The house in Glendale that we filmed the fraternity house at, that was just so lucky. But then our production designer actually had shot movies at that house before and knew the homeowner very, very well. We moved our crew in and moved all their antiques into one room and turned it into a frat party, and we were very fortunate. I think that Brenton, the set dressing, and the lighting team worked really well together. That's really what Brenton and his team had to perfect, was really decorating the locations to make it fit into the world.
I think the most challenging location to work with was the campus itself. We have some exterior of the campus that's UCLA, which of course is beautiful and has a very collegiate feel. And then a lot of the interiors of the campus and a couple of the exteriors of the campus were shot at this location in Pomona that was a construction zone that used to be a post office. We had scouted that very, very, very early, and John did a really great job of, once he had seen that location, once we kind of knew that that was our top contender for where we were going to shoot it, he went back into the script and back into the blocking and really mapped it out for that location.
I have to say our production design team was run thin. We're asking them to turn an entire construction site or help make it look like, the illusion of a college campus.
Our production design team did a great job with kind of playing with the idea that less is more, putting just enough in to make it feel like we were in an actual campus, pulling out enough that it feels just slightly off. There's something always a little bit dangerous about that location. We didn't want to glorify the deaths in any way or make them feel cool or each one should feel like it has weight and feels truly horrifying.
Every death scene had practical effects on it, at least like 90%. Gabby Castellanos, the makeup artist, I've been working with her for almost 10 years as well. Again, it's her attention to detail, and she's fast. Wes's death scene was the classic horror death scene. It's the longest one. It took the longest to shoot. It was a lot of blood and a lot of stunts.
Chasing him around, lifting him up, throwing him around. Even though it's safe and we have pads, Wes had a double that I was able to really unleash on a little bit.
We made what we could look the best we could on camera with the amount of time that we had. And then luckily in post, we were able to polish it up and make it look, very realistic.
Action. Cut. That was the take.
The last one was great.
Woo! That's a wrap on the first week, everybody.
Dylan's death was very important to have like a quick hit. Like if he's gonna realistically murder somebody on a college campus in the middle of the day, he's not gonna take a long time to do it. He's gonna do it somewhere private.
When I went in, I grabbed him and I was gonna be gentle, but his body just went limp and he pushed off with like a leg and threw himself the first time in rehearsal into the wall. And I was like, oh, can we make this seem like it's the most violent thing ever? And he's like, yeah, absolutely, man, just throw me around. And they had a camera mounted above that I thought was really a great idea and a great way to cover that scene.
I love going all out on stuff. That's like my jam, just going all out. And I had pads. I was like a Ninja Turtle. I had like elbow pads, knee pads, chest, back. It was just all under my overalls and my hoodie. I had like a whole blood tube like going from my pants to like where my ankle was, you know. We rehearsed it multiple times with Huertas, and like we practiced everything in the motions. But I definitely took some Advil the next day. I actually put my head in the toilet for one take. It was like one of the last ones, so I was like, you know what, I'm doing it. Huertas was like, no, don't do it, don't do it. But I was going all out.
At the end of that take, I think everyone's jaws were on the floor like, is he okay? He seriously looked like he got fucked up. Beau's was the most interesting for me, and I think John's take on it was really intriguing because Beau's the one that is captured in the most vulnerable state. That goes back to turning the tables on what we've traditionally seen in the slasher genre and really objectify the men to some degree.
We knew that the masturbation was like a key element that was staying there, but that whole like thrown into the wall and I think the action that was added to it just helped pit Beau into this vulnerable, emasculated state more and more. That's what we were building up there and building towards.
As far as the special effects go, almost everything was done in camera.
What is this?
This is that. What do you think it is?
We can't reveal who the character is, but this
is a silicone double of the actor's hand.
Our makeup artist, Gabby Castellanos, is amazing with practical blood effects and gore and things like that. We had essentially like a tube running down the drill that the killer uses, and that was as he's drilling his neck, that's kind of spurting blood there, so that was an in-camera effect.
Every kill, too, is inherently sexual. They're on their hands and knees, they're on the ground, he's standing over them. That was done very purposefully by John, too.
He's the one that actually perpetrated the assault on his daughter, and so I wanted to do that one where my male package to be right in his face when I'm, you know, anchoring him to the floor. To me, a father would take out the ultimate punishment on a guy like that.
All the actual death moments with the characters, Huertas wanted to be under the mask for all the death scenes. He requested to be, yeah.
I loved that he wanted to be there. It also affected, you know, others. And I think just in terms of movements too, that was great.
Audiences are not dumb. If it was anybody other than me, I feel like it could take an audience member out. It would take me out. And I feel like it was very important for the audience to know that that guy is the same guy and that we've seen him walking around and now we think that was the same walk. The details, and people pay attention to that. I do.
There's blood everywhere around here, so please watch your step.
Thank you, Travis.
Shooting the finale of the film, there are a lot of moving pieces, but John had done a lot of work in advance of mapping out very clearly where every character was at any given point in time.
Basically, the shot's gonna be up, and they're gonna walk into it, and you're gonna stay over Max's right shoulder, or left, whatever shoulder Pope told you to, and then you're just gonna hang here until he comes back, and then you know you're gonna come back like this. That's when the brawl happens. The minute the killer, or Van Horn, tackles the killer to the ground, go to Max, and we're gonna see him hit his head. Okay. Cool?
Action killer!
We were on a very condensed timeline. We had 16 days to shoot this movie, and to film the sequence the right way, the only way we were going to be able to do that was have the actors play off each other through the entire thing and not make it choppy. I shot it like a play. You're going to start from running here to getting into the computer lab, to seeing Shailene run, being chased by the killer, to her exiting. All.
Yeah, I lost it. Good.
Great.
Do that. Sorry. Do that last punch one more time. Just the punch.
And then if you can, just bring it right across.
Yeah. There you go. Right across the eye. Yeah.
Second one, 2, 3.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
perfect. Yeah.
I mean, we really worked on the timing essence of that. I'm gonna get stabbed. We do have a retractable bladed knife. We have, you know, and we're swapping that out with a real knife depending on what angle we're shooting. You know, we really had to work on that with the coordinator and make sure that all the timing is right because we didn't have a lot of time once the cameras are rolling to capture it.
Our steady cam op, long day for him. Jose is incredibly strong because he would have this camera on him for 10 minutes. I mean, we did long takes.
I decided to jump on B camera for a couple times. We had A camera on our Steadicam, and I just grabbed B cam on handheld and just kind of picked off some complementary angles there to help flesh out those beats a bit more.
What that allowed for, and then the running down the hallway, you know, the physical fight, all of that, what that allowed for was it to, again, feel very real for us. It was choreographed, and yet we were allowed to be slightly messy with it.
What are you guys doing? Oh, Jesus!
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's great. So let's get the orbit shot of Van Horn, and then we're going to get the drone at the same time.
I've really been impressed with the progression of drones throughout the years. That shot was a shot that John was very clear on from the very beginning. This is like the point where we're really leaving our characters. Up until this point, we've always kind of been in the space with them. And this is the first time where we're really pulling out to this point of view that we haven't seen before and just leaving them in this little square courtyard, this little social media square. And we jump into a point of view we haven't seen before. So that was something John had wanted from the very beginning. That was a very early conversation.
Picture wrap on Patrick.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on me. Thank you for hanging out, and I'm excited to show you the movie.
I just feel lucky that, you know, we had the time and the team to do it. And I'm thrilled that, you know, this film will find an audience.
It was such a beautiful blend of young thinkers, of passionate, hard workers and artists. This film and everyone in it represents the best of what filmmaking is.
It was surreal to finally finish this movie because we've been so invested in this and so a part of this world and these characters for so long. And I've seen, you know, all of the drafts that, you know, John and the writers have put forth and seen how that story has evolved. And I really think that we shot the film when it needed to be shot.
I remember being on the set finally. I wasn't even shooting that day. I came by to just kind of hang out. And because I had to see with my own eyes, I was like, this is really happening. We're actually making this movie. So it's been surreal this whole time.
This felt so special because it actually was a bunch of people coming together because we were like, this story is an incredible story and we'd like to be a part of telling it.
The vibe, it's like if I could do an equation, it'll be vibe plus initiation equals fun.
We had great chemistry from the start, so every day it was fun knowing I was getting to work on this film.
I didn't think I would bond with the other actors so quickly and so well. I mean, especially us three girls, we still keep in touch, and John and the cinematographer and the producers and everyone, they made me feel very safe and comfortable and like I really belonged there, and that's just more than I could ever ask for on my first project.
It was a good experience. I met good people on it, got to reconnect with some good people and good friends. And at the end of the day, you can't really ask for more.
You know, for me, it was very rewarding to work with this group, Lindsay, John, Brian, because they're all getting the momentum in their careers. As long as it's a positive experience, it's only gonna enhance their journey as long as everyone gives that kind of energy to them. And I feel like everybody that worked on the film did that. Everybody kind of gave that to each other. And that's what made me feel, you know, really, really gratified from being a part of this project.
Making this movie was the most fun I've ever had. I was living my dream. Making this movie was my life goal, and it is the most rewarding experience to be able to sit here and talk with you about it, knowing that people are going to be able to see it. And so it is a journey, and you just have to never give up.